I'm really excited to chat to you today about relationships and especially how they relate to men. I think that a lot of our male audience, I see a grin there. I'm assuming you're equally excited. But I think that a lot of our male audience will benefit from hearing what you have to say. I wanted to explore specifically today the topics of masculinity, vulnerability, and generally the role of men as narrated by our society. Um, so, as yourself being an former Air Force captain, you could say you were once a manly man, I dare say.
Dare say it, okay?
I, so, yes, you can correct me if I'm off on that, but um,
That's
yeah, I think.
one way of certainly one way of saying it. I mean, the way that I would experience it is I would say I was immersed in the culture of hyper. I was immersed in the culture of kind of hyper shallow masculinity or hyper
Mhm.
immature masculinity. Um, shadow masculinity.
Mhm.
That's how I would frame it. But yeah, yeah, yeah,
Or what is, I guess, perceived to be masculine traits,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, very good point.
Um, yeah, but I think you've had a really interesting life from what I know of it. You've now become a very well-known relationship coach and author. And lately, you've been really driving the conversation around men,
Mm.
vulnerability, and intimacy. So I'd love to hear about your background and what it is that you do in your day to day as a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, so yes, being raised a boy in Western modern culture, I was also then I went to a school, a technical university to learn engineering where men outnumbered women by 5 to 1. I went into then the military after that in the Air Force, and you know, I was through all of that, I was trained by culture and then trained by military to not feel anything, to disconnect from my body and really live exclusively in my head and my thoughts and my ideas, perspectives, opinions, whatever, all head, no body. And I got out of the military at 26 years old, and I couldn't feel anything. Just couldn't feel anything. Definitely couldn't cry, but I also couldn't really laugh. I certainly couldn't laugh in my body. Even laughter was a head up experience. And I attempted to do intimate relationship with women from that place, and it was a disaster over and over and over and over again. For the next 10 years, it was just one disaster after another. Despite my best intentions, despite always wanting to do relationship well, I've got two mothers and three sisters. Like, I figured if anybody knows how to do intimacy well, it should be me. If anybody knows how to be, I don't know, effective, I guess you could say, or to connect to a woman, and it should be me. But I had no idea what I was doing. And, um, at 36 years old, I just resolved to stop sucking at relationship for the rest of my life. I just couldn't believe, Liddy, that I was destined to suck at intimacy forever. And that was 10 years ago. I'm 46 now, and my journey since then, and working with and exploring and studying relationship and what is it that us men are missing? What are we not getting? What are we not learning? That obviously we need to be learning.
Mhm.
As I started answering those questions for myself and sharing those answers with others through my writing and through coaching, and today in my day to day as a coach, particularly, I work with both couples and I work with women as well as men, but I'm focusing more and more on men.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of what I'm doing is helping people first connect to themselves, come back home into our own bodies, learn how to be in our own feelings and become intimate with ourselves again. Because when I was in the military, I lost intimacy with me, you know, couldn't feel anything. I was disconnected from my own body. And how the hell am I going to be intimate with a woman if I can't even be intimate with myself? If I can't even feel my own feelings? So I know this is a long answer, and I don't know if this
Mhm.
is going on and on too much. Um, let me stop there and
Yeah,
check. Am I answering the question? Is there?
yeah, no, totally. You definitely are, and I think you raised a really interesting point because you mentioned how in the military you get very disconnected to your feelings and your emotions, but I don't necessarily think that that's a unique thing um, to the military because sure it's amplified, but I think that a lot of people have that same experience in a milder version, in just walking around, like in day-to-day life. And a lot of people are not really connected to what's going on for them, and particularly as we'll go in this more and more in relationships, when we've got all that other stuff that comes in it, like all the emotions and our needs and our all that kind of thing. It's really hard to be connected. And that was actually, I wanted to ask you, which I think you've already touched on just before. I find it very fascinating that you talk about the fact that you grew up with so many women that you had quite close relationships with, both younger and older. So you've had that exposure to females and close relationships. However, that didn't necessarily set you up for success in understanding women in intimate relationships. And I think, like for me personally, I can't help the question because that comes as a surprise. I'm like, I always thought like, oh, date a guy. I was told date a guy that has sisters because they'll get us. Like I like genuinely heard that as a thing, but I think it goes more so to like a cultural issue there. Like, what do you think is missing in that early education in our culture when it comes to being in relationships, showing up in relationships, and having that dance between each other?
Well, look, I agree with date a man who has sisters, who respects his mother, all of that. That's great. I think I was taught from a very early age. I learned a healthy respect for women. I learned to relate to women as people, not just sexual beings, not
Mm,
just, yeah, I learned to relate to women as in friendly ways, in safe ways. I learned how to be non-sexual with women and how to respect women as leaders. I mean, my moms were incredible in terms of their capacity to hold our family together and to in a way even kind of hold my fathers up when they were flailing about.
mm,
So that was really valuable for me. And I see how that has served me well in many ways throughout my life. Now, when it comes to intimacy, though, I never learned how to express desire, to have
mm,
needs. I never learned how to, um, for example, and I think this again is certainly very, very cultural. There was so much, sex was something that you just didn't talk about. It was sort of there was a shamefulness about it. I mean, I learned as a young boy that boys just want to get into a girl's pants, and that makes him some kind of dirty, and he's a bad boy. So I had a choice, like either be a bad boy and have desire, or pretend I don't have desire and be a good boy. And I know a lot
mm,
of men are faced with that choice. Some men just say, "Yeah, I want to get into a girl's pants," and so what? And they go down that path and they become sort of a dominator, conqueror of women, but they struggle with intimacy. I think other men, a lot of men, modern men, we castrate ourselves and pretend, "Well, I don't have any desire. I actually don't have I don't have any needs." We're very respectful. It's like so there's this sort of polar experience that neither one of those in and of themselves are useful skillful places in which to do intimate relationship with a woman
Mm.
for a man. So, that's just one example of many. It's like not knowing, just failings of culture to help prepare me to be a man who can own desire. I have desire, and also still fully respect a woman's right to say no to my desire,
Mm.
for example.
Yeah.
That's a skill that I had to learn in my late 30s, how to own that I have desire, to speak from my desire, from needs and desire. Use even that word needs. Men aren't supposed to have needs. And men
Mhm.
also think women shouldn't have needs in our hyper independent culture. No one should have needs. Freedom is our value. Every man and therefore woman for him or herself. It's just a myth. It's a delusion. But yet, so many men, myself included, delusion and then trying intimacy with another person from this place like none of us should have needs. Because if
Sorry,
you
you
have
just
needs,
cut
you're
out
just
in that
needy.
last bit. Do you mind repeating do you mind repeating that last sentence?
So we're uh, none of us are supposed to have needs. Men aren't
Mhm.
supposed to have needs, and therefore women aren't supposed to have needs. According to a man. And yet here we are then trying to do intimate relationship with someone from this place where none of us are allowed to have needs, and it's a shit show.
Mhm.
I mean, so all of this mass confusion about how to do intimacy with another person from this kind of hyper individualistic ideal of every man and therefore every woman for himself. It's a delusion that we live in that's irreconcilable. So naturally, I'm constantly working with men who do want to be in relationship, committed monogamous relationship. They want that, but they also don't know how to have it because
Mm.
they immediately feel trapped or controlled or shut or intimidated, afraid, and I think women too also, I think in the context we've created for intimacy, I think especially as women, these days are really encouraged to be your own woman and your own independence. And then like relationship is a place where people we go and we lose ourselves. We don't know how to be ourselves and be in relationship, and how do we do that? And I'm kind of ranting. I feel like I'm ranting a little bit here. There's a lot
Yeah.
going on and on.
No, it's very interesting to listen to it all.
So um yeah, well, help me. I want to make sure that I'm answering your questions and
Yeah, I guess the main question there was, what do you think is missing in our early education in throughout childhood, adolescence that helps us to navigate being in relationships?
yeah, that's a great question. I think when I think back to being an adolescent myself into my teens, um, I mean, oh goodness, there's so many layers to that question. I
Yeah, sorry about that.
well, that's okay. I love great. It's a great question for that reason. But I think that our culture as a whole, we fail our adolescents big time. I think we
Mm,
fail teenagers. We don't know how, especially teenage boys, definitely teenage women as well. But I think teenage men, there's a very special, there's a unique failure culturally where we don't help adolescent boys become adult men.
mhm,
We leave adolescent boys in an extended adolescence that I see as a coach. Uh, Men don't start psychologically running into the limits of their adolescent behavior and adolescent thinking until their late 30s or their 40s at the earliest.
mm,
So most men in our culture are adolescent in their thinking and in their behavior for most of their lives. What does that look like? It looks like men not wanting to take responsibility for how their behaviors impact others, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like men, you know, um, well, not wanting to take responsibility, not wanting to apologize, not wanting to own. There's a lot of defensiveness, a lot of walls go up, a lot of, again, the fist in the air and freedom, shouts of freedom, whether in
Mm-hmm.
politics or in relationship, that adolescent sort of, um, I don't want to take responsibility for anyone else's hurt, to each his own. And that's an incredibly, uh, let's just say, unskillful and unhelpful stance when it comes to relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, we come in relationships as two people with different needs. As much as we think we might not have needs, it's just um, on a very animalistic level. We do, like, we have needs to survive, to feel safe, to feel connected, to feel loved. All of those things are very natural, and it's going back a step back, when you were saying that our culture is so obsessed with being so independent, and we look after our own needs, and we don't need, we don't need another person and whatnot. Like, I can totally see how when you've been programmed to think that way, when two people have been programmed to, I think that way, when they come together, it can become very confusing. It's like you don't know how to meet each other's needs. Like, you've
Yeah.
learned how to meet your own and how to be that independent person, but you haven't figured out, well, you haven't learned the skills um, to to feed each other's. So I think that's a really interesting concept.
Yeah. Our national holiday is Independence Day. That's our national, the myth of the American mythology is we are an independent nation. Independence is our battle cry, freedom. Well, of course, that's going to show up in our intimate relationships. And I see it all the damn time. I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It often shows up, in heterosexual relationships. It shows up typically as a man wanting his freedom, wanting space, wanting to be able to do whatever he wants to do, resenting his partner's, what he would call, neediness,
Mm-hmm.
whereas his partner is wanting connection. And again, in this example, in a heterosexual example, she's wanting to feel his care and concern. She's wanting to feel that her upsets, her frustrations, her feelings matter to him, that they're important to him, that he cares, that he is willing to be influenced by her. Whereas, again, but then he's over there with his fist in the air, freedom. I don't want to be influenced by anybody. I'm my own man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, again, that's just one sort of dynamic that plays out a lot, I think, in particularly in heterosexual man-woman dynamics. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it in same-sex relationships, though. That same kind of, one partner is more sort of freedom oriented, and the other partner is more connection oriented, and they have these arguments, and they're not even arguing about the same thing.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that I would say we mix each other, men and women, or the masculine and feminine, as you often put it. But in this specific case, how do men often miss women or misread women then? So when they come to them for that need for connection or whatever it might be, how does this persistent obsession with independence and me, um, misread that need for that when a woman is reaching out for real connection or reaching out to have one of her needs met?
Well, oftentimes that reach for connection is received as a constriction on my freedom. You,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, I'm thinking of a couple that I'm working with right now. I just want to be mindful to keep their details anonymous. But I see this a lot in, let's say, let's say, one partner wants more communication. She wants to, give me a couple text messages in the course of the day. And he's over there thinking, but I'm working, I'm doing stuff, I'm on my mission, I'm in mission mode. And you're wanting me to give you something that is an affront to my mission. It's a distraction from my mission.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, she's wanting connection in a sense. I mean, she may support his so-called mission, but at the same time, she doesn't give a shit about his mission if she feels disconnected from him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so this tension, I see this. There's this movie, the Mission Impossible movies. You familiar with those?
Yes, yes.
Tom Cruise, his character, he makes the choice. This is in the plot. This isn't my interpretation. They speak this. This is in the plot of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
He has a wife, or he had a wife, but he chooses not to be married to her because if he's married to her, he can't save the world. If he gives her the connection she wants, he can't be on his mission. He can't, which is to free the world of its problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has to choose relationship, connection, or mission, freedom. And it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to choose his mission.
Yeah. So it's Tom Cruise's fault, basically. He planted the seed in society.
Well,
Fair to
I
say.
mean, it's not
It's
helpful. I'll just say that much. It doesn't help.
yeah,
It plays into that independence, freedom, masculine
yeah.
reward culture that just makes intimate relationship, it's just a big middle finger to connection.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it in our politics. I mean, again, I know I'm kind of, I like to play a lot of big picture here, and it's
Yeah,
because I see it at every level. It's not just what's happening
totally.
in our intimacy. If we don't, it's pervades every aspect of our culture, and it shows up in our intimate relationships.
Yeah, I mean, we don't realize just how influenced we are by media, by the messages that we receive day to day. In my past life, I actually worked in advertising, and it's amazing. I forget the actual figure, but it's actually like mind blowing how many statistically, how many ads and
Mhm.
external messages every human takes in every single day. And it's in the thousands. Everything from, the moment we wake up to see our phone to when we're walking to, the subway stop, driving on the highway, just every single way we go, we're just bombarded with subliminal messages, even if it's just a picture of a masculine man, holding beautiful girls. It's like, oh yeah, that's what a man should be. So I'm
Yeah,
totally all for, like, I'm totally all for it. Like, I get it. I 100% support that. Yeah.
it's everywhere. I mean, even in my country, in the US, even like the whole Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, it's in that conversation, right? One side is wanting to say, "Hey, see us, we matter. Let us know that we matter." And
Mm-hmm.
the other side is saying, "Everybody matters." The mission, like we're on a mission to free the entire world, not just you people. This happens in intimate relationship. One partner saying, "I need to feel that I matter to you. Please show me that I matter to you." And the other one's going, "Hey, let's get perspective here. Everything needs to matter, or this, nothing needs, that shouldn't matter more than this matters over here." And there's like all of that philosophical rumination. As I said, when in the military, I lived head up.
Mm-hmm.
So all philosophy, all perspective, all logic, my own, of course,
Mm-hmm.
all, I can't feel anything. So my partner comes to me with a hurt and an upset. If I don't agree with it, then it's not valid. And I
Mm-hmm.
miss it. It's like saying,
And
you
yeah,
see?
yeah, totally. And that brings up another interesting, I guess, issue there, that if you are head up and you're only able to process that doesn't necessarily mean feeling, because you're only processing information from here up, but you're still, you're still feeling the things that are down there, right? Like that are like head down, because that's natural. That's part of us being humans, right? So there seems like, it's almost like therein lies the issue, that there is stuff going on down there that you don't know how to process. You're only knowing how to process from there,
Well,
right?
that's a good point. I think a lot of societies and the ills of intimate relationship is the disconnect from the body, is the inability to process, to feel what is happening in our bodies. And instead, what comes out, instead of saying, for example, I feel really hurt right now by what you just said, right? Like your partner says something or does something, instead of, man, that really hurt me. I feel really sad hearing what you just said. Instead of that, what we usually say, because we don't want to feel the sadness, we don't want to feel the hurt. Instead, what we go is, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't do that. We get
Mm,
on our high horse and our righteous horse, and we try to fix the offending behavior with our fingers pointed. You need to stop. You need to do this. You need to, and because we don't want to feel what we're feeling.
mm,
And yet,
yeah.
in intimacy, the one of the most important essential communication practices is to simply communicate what you're feeling. Like what I
Mm,
said, what you just said, that really hurt me. That made me feel really sad when you said that. When you did that, I felt heartbroken. I felt crushed. I felt angry. Not you shouldn't have said that, or you shouldn't do that, or you should have said something else, or you should have, right? That's because that just creates defensiveness. That creates the war. That turns relationship into two adversaries just butting heads for dominance and who gets to be right.
mm,
So when we can learn to feel our feelings and speak from that place, well, now we invite curiosity. We invite,
mm,
with someone who, when two people are in that conversation, it's like, whoa, okay, well, um, damn, I didn't know that that hurt you. Well, tell me more. Let's work through this together.
mm. And you can't have your needs met if you don't first know how to communicate them, right?
For sure, definitely.
Um, so how then are men in our culture, in our society, programmed to um, process or um, deal with their feelings as they come up? Like how?
Well, we're not. They're not supposed to come up at all, right?
Mm,
We're number one, we're programmed to not feel them. Boys don't cry. Don't be a sissy. I mean, those are the messages my generation certainly got. Uh,
mm,
and feeling, there's no crying in baseball. Remember that famous line from the Tom Hanks movie, where he's the man is he the male manager with the female baseball team. One of the ladies starts crying when she strikes out or something, and he's like, he doesn't know what to do. There's no crying in baseball. That's the message we get. There's no crying in life.
mm,
And I think, for a lot of men, the only safe emotion, and even that's not really, um, even that's fraught with complications, but the only safe emotion for men is anger, because we feel powerful in it. But the problem is, we only know how to be destructive with anger. We don't know how to use anger constructively. And that's something that
mm,
I teach. I work with men. How do we use anger constructively when all we've ever seen it is used destructively? But for a lot
mm,
of men, that's kind of the first go-to emotion. It's the first, you know, awakening of and a lot of men, they'll live in anger, but destructively.
mm.
So we're a mess, Lydia. We're a mess. Men are a mess emotionally, and we're seeing it in the culture. it's revealing itself in the culture. The culture is, man, especially in the United States, but I think, the world is feeling it. Wow, what a time of strife and disconnect and upset and adversary. It's frightening in my country, especially. Like, it's frightening here in the States what's happening.
Mm. Yeah, wow. It makes you just, want to make sure that we're doing a good job at training the next generation as best we can. Hey, so in terms of, I guess, how that comes out in destructive ways in relationships, what are some examples of how that kind of um, expression of emotion that men are taught, how does that negatively affect then their relationships?
Yeah. So when men don't have a healthy relationship with their own emotions, it goes one of two ways. We either explode outwards when we can't hold it in anymore, or we implode inwards because that's the only other place to go with it. But imploding could look like being emotionally frozen, shut down, unable to experience real joy, certainly, or anger for that matter. And so it's kind of like a dead man walking,
Mm,
dead man walking. And what then often happens, I've worked with men like this and that are stuck in this place. What often happens is are their partners feel all the emotions that the men isn't feeling, and it's usually a lot of anger because she's wanting him to feel. She's wanting to feel connected to him, and he's a dead man walking, and she's angry now. Where the fuck are you? Is essentially what she's railing against. Where are you? Can't feel you. Where are you? Right? And a
mhm,
lot of times, a lot of men will kind of bounce between the two extremes. The imploded, sort of shut down, frozen man will then, when he can't take it, when he can't take it anymore, he explodes outwards. Whether that looks like full blown indulging in some addiction. Porn addiction is rampant these days. Um, or anger, displays of very destructive, violent anger.
mhm,
Again, in my country, I mean, we're having so many mass shootings right now, and they're all men. Men are the mass shooters here, and it's often white men. Though we don't know
mhm,
what to do with our anger. We don't know what to do with our anger, and so it explodes in acts of violence, and just even in relationship. If I don't know how to feel my anger or feel my emotions, well, I am going to the consequence of that is I'm going to project my discomfort with my own emotions onto my partner, and she ain't going to be allowed to feel her emotions either.
mm. So
I'm
you're
going to
just trying to shut it down for yourself and for her.
shut everything down,
Mm,
shut it all down. So it doesn't make for a good scenario for anybody.
mm. Wow, that's interesting. I mean, you yourself have been very vocal about your own just challenges with um, figuring out how to do relationships and going from that place to where you are now, which is extremely insightful and knowledgeable. How did you start to become comfortable with feeling these emotions? So, what are some of the things that tips you can give to males that are starting out to begin being more comfortable in first processing it and then beginning to express it in a healthy way?
Great question. Over the years, there have been moments in my life where I've noticed a lot of discomfort.
Mm,
I remember um, probably 10 years ago when I was in an on again, off again relationship with a woman. There was one night where I knew she was with another man, and I remember I was staying in my parents' place, and I remember in their guest bedroom, there's nothing to be done about it. And I remember I just sat in the bedroom and I just felt the devastation I was feeling. I just allowed myself to feel it. I mean, to this day, it was like one of the most painful but also most beautiful moments of my life. Just feeling the heartbreak that I was experiencing in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's an extreme example. There are other examples of, I remember I lived in Miami, Florida, and there was this place called Lincoln Road, where all the cool, beautiful people hung out. And I remember I would walk by this one restaurant where, again, it was like the hot spot, and it brought up all my insecurities. I wasn't in the cool crowd when I was in high school. I wasn't in the popular crowd, so all my insecurities started to come up. And I did this practice using that restaurant. I would walk back and forth in front of the restaurant where all these cool people were hanging out. I would just walk across it and I would feel all of my stuff that was coming up as I walked back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. My fear, insecurity, um, my own judgments of those people, like everything. I just watched it all. And I think
Mm-hmm.
what I'm getting at here is one of the most profound practices that a man who has been disconnected from his emotions can do is start to notice those areas where he is feeling something, where something in the world, maybe he's reading the news and he's reading about this president or that president and it's pissing him off. Notice what happens in your body when anger arises.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's in traffic, when you're driving in traffic and starting to feel frustration. Well, watch frustration arise in your body. Maybe it's when you're starting to feel sexually turned on. What most men do when we feel sexually turned on is like we got to do something about it. I got to grab my phone and masturbate, or go to my partner and beg her or insist that we go to bed, whatever. Well, take a couple minutes before you take any action and just notice what sexual arousal feels like in the body, right? So it's like getting intimate with oneself. Start to notice, wow, that's what it feels like. So when I get angry, my chest starts to get tight. Oh, that's interesting. I never noticed that before.
Mm-hmm.
When my face gets constricted or my throat, like start to notice, start to pay attention. Because I mean, look, foreshadowing, this is a really valuable practice for relationship, because when you start to notice in a conversation with your partner, for example, if you start to notice anger is arising, again, what most of us do is we just be angry and we shout or we point or we run away, we just act out anger.
Mm-hmm.
But when we can instead start to say, before we do any of the acting out, when we can just say, you know what, man, I'm feeling really angry right now. Period. Just that. I'm feeling really angry right now.
Yeah.
Ooh, when we can just say that, and it can completely change the dynamic and outcome of a conversation with somebody.
So you don't necessarily need to go into the why, or is that the next step? Is it just learning to be comfortable with that feeling existing without needing to just get it out or shove it down, or
Why
um
is it? Why is a very tricky subject, and
mm,
we're usually wrong.
yeah.
We know why. I've worked with a lot of couples for whom alcohol is an unhelpful presence in the relationship. Not full
Mm-hmm.
blown addiction, but just alcohol. Just having a couple drinks causes one or the other partner to feel insecure or anxious.
Mm,
And this came up with a couple recently where alcohol came up, her partner's alcohol consumption, which wasn't excessive, but they
mm,
most hadn't been drinking alcohol for a few years, and then all of a sudden he wanted to start drinking again. And she's feeling a lot of anxiety And it's easy to say, well, why are you anxious when I drink alcohol? Well, I'm anxious because, you know, I don't know what happens to you when you drink. And when you drink, you forget to call me, and that's why. Well, that actually isn't why. This woman had a history in her family of men who used alcohol and drove themselves to oblivion.
Mm,
One man close to her literally drank himself to death.
mm.
So there, why is a tricky thing, and that's I think that those are not that it doesn't have its place, but it's just a tricky subject because why? Like, there's always another reason behind the reason you think.
So maybe that's more of you work with a professional like yourself or whoever to uncover that. But as just that first step for somebody who wants to just start to get comfortable with that, you would say, sit with the emotion, let it be. And do you have any tips for some of the emotions which I would imagine could be really uncomfortable? What do you do then when it feels like overbearingly uncomfortable? Sorry, you just froze for a
Yeah,
second
which
again.
for especially men that are not
Mm,
yeah, especially for men that are not used to feeling their emotions, most emotions are uncomfortable. Even joy, even excitement is uncomfortable
yeah.
for a lot of men. But one practice that I teach men and women too that struggle with their own emotions is to when they start to notice an uncomfortable emotion arise, whether they're by themselves or in conversation with someone, is when they notice it, as soon as they start to notice it, and again, like for myself, I know my if I'm getting angry, my throat will feel tight, my face will get really stiff and throat. So I know, oh shit, I'm getting angry.
Mm,
So what someone can do is see if you keep trying to communicate or if you take action from that place, it's not going to go well.
mm,
Instead, what you could do is remove yourself, whether from the conversation, just excuse yourself, say, I need 10 minutes or I need 20 minutes. Go to the bathroom, go sit in your car, go for a walk, and set a timer. Take your phone, set a timer for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, no more than 20 minutes, and just allow yourself to feel what is there to be felt.
mm,
And the reason you set a timer is because the timer signals to the brain that this won't last forever.
mm.
Because the big fear, particularly for, I think more for men, is that the fear is if I allow this emotion, it's going to overwhelm me and destroy me. It's because it's going to last forever.
Mm.
And I'm too busy. I got shit to do. I have a
I could
mission.
be a man. I could, yeah,
I'm on my mission. I
yeah.
can't feel this or it's going to sidetrack me from what I'm trying to accomplish. Whatever that.
Mm,
It's gonna make the relationship hell. So we can't feel it. Let's pretend nothing's happening because I don't want this relationship to be hell. Well, what we
yeah.
realize is if we can just allow for 5 minutes of hell, well, just like let there be a full 5 minutes of hell, allow it, and it
Mm,
passes, and then we feel better and we can get back to, whatever we were doing, perhaps.
yeah. And is there any sort of little tips or suggestions that you have for the other partner, man or woman, depending on your relationship, that can sort of help aid that process for the man, or should that be an independent? Well, actually, no. We established that it's not all independent. We have to do it together. Is there anything that we could do to help with that?
Certainly, all kinds of things. And it really does depend on the couple because what works for one couple won't work for another. But
Hmm.
as an example, if you notice, like if you're with a partner who is having difficulty identifying their feelings, a lot of times when I'll ask men, how are you feeling? They'll tell me what they're thinking.
Hmm.
And again, this won't work for every couple because sometimes, if your partner doesn't want to be connected to their feelings, then this will probably just piss them off. But
Mm,
if they do want to be connected to their feelings, like if you're with someone who does want to grow and want to learn and is trying to do better and etc., you can help by mirroring what they may be feeling.
mhm.
But you have to be careful. You can't tell them, "I see you're upset," because they may not be upset. But you can check in. Hi, babe, are you feeling upset right now?
Mm,
Are you feeling upset right now? You seem frustrated. Are you frustrated?
mhm.
Right? And what he may do, let's just say yeah, I am frustrated because blah 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 blah. Well, you got to leave off the because. Notice that's why, and that's not
Yeah.
helpful. That's not helpful to him or to whoever's wanting to connect with him. Just, you seem really frustrated right now. Are you frustrated? You know what? Yeah, I am frustrated. Yeah, I'm frustrated. Okay, let's just sit. Come. Let's just sit and let's just feel frustration together for a moment. And he may not want to feel it. This is what I mean. For some couples, this won't work because he won't want
Mhm.
to sit in his frustration. He won't want to. He just wants to, avoid it, get away from it. So, but you know, if your partner is open to that, that can be profoundly helpful.
Mhm.
If your partner's not open to that, for example, um, I mean, look, it's really tricky to grow in a
Yeah.
relationship if your partner's not open to growing.
Mm.
And I think
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
what I'm often telling, what I'm often, the thing about men is, and maybe this is true for women, I don't know, but I'm confident that this is so for men, that that change comes to us really through two means. One, we work really hard at it. Like we really want to change and grow, and we work at it and we work at it, and maybe we fail more often than not, but at least we're in the game. And the other is we hit rock bottom and we have no choice but to change.
Mhm.
Rock bottom for many men often means their partner is leaving them.
Mhm.
That's what rock bottom for most men means. It means either she's already left or he really gets, if I don't change, she's gone.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of women don't like to hear that because they don't want to leave. They want him to want to change and to grow. But if he isn't actively pursuing his own growth, well, he doesn't have much incentive if you keep hanging around while he keeps acting in ways that are hurtful for you.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I actually read something the other day that I thought was super interesting, which relates to that. That it was something along the lines of us humans by nature are lazy. We kind of just we almost operate on a power saving mode where
Mm,
we we do we only do when we have to do something. So we'll only look at why do we do this? Like, why did my partner leave me? Oh, maybe I'm a dick. Excuse my language. But oh, maybe it's because I'm a dick because, my parents were abusive or, what my dad was an alcoholic. So therefore I get angry or whatever it might be. Like we only do that when we really have to.
yeah,
That's for most cases. I thought that was really interesting. It's almost like knowing that that's our nature.
yeah.
We almost have to consciously show up to do the work if we want to avoid getting to those places. It's almost like having to be proactive about it.
I know
Do you agree?
Tony Robbins famously said, um, people change when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's in alignment with what you're saying. If we don't have to change because there's not enough consequence, then we won't.
So basically the message is for a female, just be as much of a headache to your partner until they change, nag them as much as you can. So that's
Man, those aren't
I'm
my
just trying to
words.
come up with solutions.
Those are my words.
Well,
I don't believe in punishing your partner, but I do believe in radical self-care. And if being around someone who, if being around a man who is continuing to do things that are hurtful for you, if it's hurtful for you, don't punish the man. That doesn't
of
help.
course.
And also don't be his mommy telling him what to
Mm,
do different. That doesn't help either.
mm,
Rather, practice radical self-care. What is radical? What is really caring for yourself look like? And do that.
mm,
And eventually he'll either have to catch up to you because you're taking such good care of yourself, which might mean not spending as much time with him anymore. It might mean leaving him. It might mean just
mm,
creating your own independent life, and so that you're feeling good about yourself and in yourself and in your body, and that, which by the way just increases your attractiveness to him.
mm.
And he's either going to look at you and go, whoa, I want more of that, but you're taking such good care of yourself, he's got to figure out how to meet you there.
Mm,
Or he's going to go, well, you know I don't want any of that, and he's going to leave, but you're so busy taking good care of yourself that, yeah, it hurts, but why would you want a man why would you want to why would you want a man to stay that isn't enthusiastic about staying?
yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but we'll leave that as
Yeah,
a rhetorical one.
yeah, that's really interesting. And then we've talked a lot about men, but obviously there's two pieces of the puzzle. There, I mean, unless you're in a, it depends on what your relationship arrangement is, but generally speaking, there's the two of us. And I'm interested to know, in your work with couples and with women as well, have you noticed that, you know, have you noticed like a common trend in like the gender roles that women come in, like that, um, the equal in what we've just spoken about in men? Is there this perception of how women think that they should be and act in relationships?
Well, I think culturally we value independence again so much that
Again.
women are being programmed, and I don't, this isn't a bad thing. Women, I think, more and more are creating their own independent lives, and
Mm,
I think it's a good thing ultimately. For all, I think any adult should be able to create a good life for themselves that isn't dependent on one other person doing it for them or taking care of them, etc. I think it's great.
mm,
In fact, I want to see more women in leadership, in politics and business. The planet needs women stepping into leadership, into the capacity to help humanity move forward. So that's a great thing.
mm,
Thing is, in intimacy, it can create a lot of issues, because in intimacy, most women, not all women, and not any woman all the time, but in intimacy, women tend to want to be more in their feminine, receptive energy, in their feminine expression, in their feeling heart, you could say. And they're
mm,
wanting to be in partnership with a man who is showing up enthusiastic in his presence, in his beautiful masculine gifts. And I I I've worked with a lot of strong, independent, successful women that are chronically dissatisfied in intimacy because they tend to attract and partner with men who are um, way more sort of feminine oriented. They tend to, and a man that often looks like very wishy-washy, uncommitted, directionless. Um, they need to be taken care of by the successful, strong woman. They tend to turn her into mommy, kind of thing.
Mm.
So, you know, I look, I'm a man, so I talk a lot about, I want to own men's contributions to the chaos we're in. As a man,
Hmm.
that's my responsibility.
Yeah.
And and to your point, women have their 100% of responsibility too.
Hmm.
And that's just one of the ways that I see the shifting gender roles um, showing up in women bringing this strong, independent, masculine ability, which is great in the world at large, but in intimacy, it can often create a lot of dissatisfaction for themselves as well as for their male partners who are perhaps on a deeper level wanting to offer more masculine strength and presence and direction and all of that, and but they neither one of them. I mean, I'm giving you a lot
Mm.
of. I'm talking a lot. I'm aware of that.
No,
Is this helpful?
this is no, this is all about hearing what you have to say. So please,
Okay.
as much as you can give us.
Okay.
No, it's fantastic, and it's very insightful, and really interesting. Sort of that we're going down that road of almost would you call it like that toxic? Well, you know how like toxic positivity is a thing. Is it like almost it's toxic independence where you you are so obsessed with, because I see it with some of my girlfriends as well, not going to name names, but I see a lot of girls that I know like closely, and as acquaintances who might they're independent, they fit that perfect persona, who just break up with men so quickly and easily, where they're like, oh well, he didn't do this, I don't need him, I'm not, I'm independent, I don't need a guy to do XYZ. And they just so the minute they come up with a level of difficulty in a relationship, or any interaction with a male, they just like cut, like there's no um yeah, there's none of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Like
there's
I see exactly what you're talking about, and it's kind of like I'm sitting there thinking like, gosh, I'm sure he didn't mean that by it, but there's just that it almost like decreases the tolerance of dealing with each other because of it, because you're kind of like, well, the minute you come up to face conflict that feels a little bit too difficult, which, and the bar again is not very high because of it, it's easy, like, okay, I'm just going to discard that, and I'm sure that you know the person that's right for me is not going to be this
mhm.
difficult, which is so far from how life really actually goes.
Yeah,
But does
it
that
really.
make sense?
Oh, completely. It speaks, I think, to our throwaway culture. It's just so easy to swipe right, to discard, throw away this phone every 12 months because there's a new phone that comes out. Um, I think it shows up in intimacy as well, especially at the beginning. And we all have the promise of perfection. With
Mm,
all the choices we have, there's this promise of perfection. And of course, pop culture just reinforces it, that there is the perfect partner for us out there somewhere, and just got to be patient and swipe. Just need to go through a few thousand people, swiping through a few thousand, but eventually I'll get there.
yeah.
And yeah, I think it's very unfortunate. It's very
Mm,
unfortunate. And then I think it's also to your point, it is a painful surprise when you do finally meet someone. Is like, oh, this is the one, like, thank God you're here. And then 3 months in, holy shit, you're the one. Like, this can't
yeah.
be. The one isn't supposed to, the one isn't supposed to want to live in Thailand when I want to live in Florida. That you can be, maybe you're not the one. The one
Yeah.
the one isn't supposed to still find themselves attracted to other people. Like, that can't be possible. We're supposed to only be attracted to each other. Or, whatever millions of iterations of of differences that any two people are inevitably going to find themselves confronted with.
I guess where to from there? What are, in your experience, having worked through difficult emotions and having worked, um, having done all the work in the hard work in relationships, what's the rewards? What are the rewards from battling all those demons
Why
and
do it?
and sitting? Pardon?
Why do it?
Why?
Yeah, well, you're saying, what are the rewards?
Yeah, why? Like, why should we stay with all of that? What comes? What's the good that comes from it?
Well, it's a great question, and I think everyone's got to come up with their own answer for why. I mean, I know. I mean, for me, um, sharing life with someone is just beautiful. It's there's this beautiful. You ever hear of the movie or see the movie Into the Wild?
Is that Tom Hanks?
No, Into the Wild. It was directed by Sean Penn. I can't remember. It was based on a true story of a young man who leaves his wealthy family, burns all his money, like gives his stuff away, and goes on a few years just journey around the U.S. And he ends up going into Alaska, into the wilds of Alaska. He ends up
Mm.
dying there.
Oh
He ends
no.
he starves to death because he can't get back to civilization. It's a true story.
Oh gosh, it's
And he ends up starving to death in this bus. Christopher McCandless was the guy's name. He ends up
hmm.
starving to death in this bus, kind of at the apex of his journey. Well, in his journal, he writes, um, "Happiness is only real when shared." It's like this epiphany he has, all by himself, in the middle of nowhere, is independent. He's trying to be independent, live off the land, depend on nobody. He burns his money, burns his credit cards. Like, he doesn't want to depend on society whatsoever.
Hmm.
Absolute independence. And while he's dying of starvation, he writes, life is, or happiness is only real when shared. Now, that's debatable. That's a question for philosophy. But to your question, um, there's so many ways to answer it. But to your question, I believe that life is richer when we share it with someone we love. It's been my
Hmm.
experience, and I'm sure that there are many, many men who would, if they were hearing our conversation or seeing this, and probably, and surely women too.
Yeah.
But speaking specifically to men who have achieved success, whether financial or professional, they've climbed a mountain of sorts, but without love in their lives, it's kind of empty and meaningless.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean anything. It's sort of it rings hollow. It doesn't satisfy. And so, why do all this? Why confront, all of the stuff that arises? Why go through the discomfort? Well, I mean, I believe we are here to learn how to love. I believe that is the highest purpose any man or woman, for that matter, can serve. And that's my opinion. But I think our
Hmm.
highest purpose here is to learn how to love, to be in service to love. What better arena within which to learn how to be a channel of love than the arena of intimate relationship, where we have to face all of our own obstacles that are in the way of love.
Hmm.
So that's my opinion. Now, there are also some very real biological reasons, health reasons. Men and women live longer. Well, men do especially live longer.
Men do, yeah.
I'm not
I
sure
know
about
about women.
men live longer in healthy relationships. I mean, all people live longer when they have healthy relationships into their
Yeah.
adulthood. Um, wounds, when wounds heal faster, actual physical wounds heal faster when we have another person who cares about our healing. For example, when we
Hmm.
are in an intimate capacity. So, I mean, there's a lot of biological reasons for working through these challenges, but mine are more philosophical, about just life is richer. We're here to learn how to love. And
Hmm.
having another person in your face every day reminding you of all the limitations of your loving is a is a powerful, if frustrating, uh, way to learn how to be ever more loving every day.
Yeah, well, and it's a reminder of where you are and how much further you have to
Absolutely.
work. That's really interesting. So going back to the point that you made earlier about how we figured out how to be really well functioning independently, but then when we get to relationships, it's almost like, how do I be myself and also be in this relationship? Do you think that the end goal is to try to figure out how to do that? And if so, how do we do that? Um, or 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 is there like a different version of ourselves that we need to learn how to be in relationships? Like
It's a great
how?
question. Yeah, it's a great question. And um, this is the great tension in any kind of relationship, whether two-person intimacy or a nation of
Mm,
people trying to live in the same place. How do I be myself, fully me, and how do I be relational so that we have a good time together? Right? There's a great tension. It's like I frame it as the the tension between individual and community concern. How
mm,
do we be individuals, but how do we also care for the health of the community? And they would seem to be at odds with each other. And you have, around the world, there are cultures who are far more community oriented, like, a lot of Asian, even Middle Eastern cultures, they're very community oriented, where the
mm,
individual is suppressed for the sake of the community. And
mm.
that has negative consequences. But
Yeah.
then you also have, hyper individual community, like America, like the United States, where we elevate the individual
Mm,
at at the cost of community, right? So again, and it happens in intimacy. How do we be our individual selves and also be in a container of a two-person dynamic so that it works for everybody?
mm,
And I think this is one of the biggest challenges any couple faces. How do they get over the hump of being two individuals to becoming a we that is made up of two individuals,
mm,
right? So I want to say that again because that's really important. How do we go beyond just being two individuals? That's where the power struggle comes in. My way or your way, and we're just going to fight there. Only one of us gets our way. Well, that doesn't serve. How do we then create a we experience that incorporates two individuals but also transcends them? Does that make sense?
mm. Yeah, it does. That is the big question. And I guess, is that a is that a journey? Is that a journey for a couple, or it's not? It doesn't sound like it's as straightforward.
Absolutely. Now, here is a question that I will often give to couples that are at this threshold of figuring that out.
Mm,
Um, what would serve we? So you're faced with a decision, you're faced with some challenge, whether it's, you know, um, I mean, it could be anything from where do we go eat dinner to do I take this job opportunity that might cause us to have to move cities, or move out of our house, or I'd make more money or less money, whatever. Um, a lot of couples really get bogged down in the the two individual system. One person's going to win and the other's going to lose in that system.
mm,
They stay there, and it's horrible because someone's going to win and someone's going to lose, which really means everybody loses. Because if
mm,
one of you is miserable, if one of you is feeling left behind in a decision or a choice, well, both of you are going to suffer from that.
yeah.
So often present couples, and I'll work with them through this question. So, what would serve we? What would serve,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's an inquiry. And every couple, when they kind of just steep in that question, magic can happen. I worked with a couple once who they were terrified of their wedding night. Their wedding was fast approaching, but they were scared because uh, a woman suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome, and
Mm.
she was certain that she'd have to go to bed by 8 o'clock
Oh no.
on her wedding night. While her
Mm.
partner, he had moved hours away from his family and friends to be with her where they lived. And on their wedding night, all of his family and friends were coming to the wedding, and he wanted to party with them all night long. Well, she's
Mm.
thinking, this is our wedding night. You better come to bed with me at 8 o'clock. He's thinking, are you kidding me? All of my friends and family that I left to come live with you are coming into town for just this one time. There's no fucking way I'm going to bed at 8 o'clock.
Mm.
You can see, notice that the two independent people, each wanting their own way, if they stay there, Lydia, what happens?
Well, only one, well, one person gets their way and then
And the other is devastated.
it's, yeah.
They
So
were
what was your solution? I'd be curious to know.
so, well, I didn't have a solution. I can't solve this for them. It seems unresolvable on the surface. But I offered them that question. What would serve we? And I left them with that question. We did some work around it, and but I left them with that question because I can't tell them what to do. I don't give advice. I don't know what anyone should or shouldn't do. But I left them with that question. And they wrote to me a few days after the wedding, and magic happened. Because this was the first time each of them were in that question. Okay, let me get out of what I want for a moment. Not abandon it. They each still wanted what they wanted, but it's like, let's step into each other's shoes and just sort of sit with this question. Like, we both deserve to have an amazing time on our wedding night. That they could agree on. We both deserve to have a beautiful night, right? That
Mm.
they could agree on. So, what would serve we? Well, something fascinating happened. In that question, um, well, I'll tell you what happened, and then I'll tell you my theory about why it happened. But apparently, she, the wife, the one who who was sure she'd be in bed by 8 o'clock, she had so much energy that she was the one who was partying all night, and the husband had to, like, 2 o'clock in the morning, tell her it's time to go to bed.
Okay.
What I believe happened, or at least helped. See, when we're locked in these one-on-one adversarial stances, our nervous systems, we're tight. We're in fight mode, fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of energy that goes into that. That's very stressful on the body. So a lot of energy gets taken up in this fight or flight resistance mode. In that question, what would serve we? I believe, and I see this happen a lot. I can see it visually when I'm working with couples. There's a relaxation that happens in the body. Okay, my partner cares about my experience. I can
Mm-hmm.
relax. So the body relaxes. And when the body relaxes, energy gets freed up.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is just a theory I have. But I don't know for sure, but in her relaxation, in the relaxing of this place of tension and stress, I believe she simply had more resources to enjoy the experience and enjoy the night. And there she is, trusting that they'll find their way, even though they didn't have a concrete solution. Just the fact that their minds were in we we consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just the fact that their minds had switched into we consciousness, it creates a safety. It creates a care, a mutual concern and caring. That when people feel safe in their partnership, okay, well, all new things are possible. that are not possible when two people don't feel safe because they're afraid they're going to get left behind somehow or lose them.
Hmm. It sounds like the same kind of thing that happens when you're really like afraid of something and you're tense, you're not really taking in your environment, you're not freeing up your resources to do all of those other things. But when you do have that safety in the connection, it's funny how they both ended up kind of getting what they wanted by compromising with the other person. It's um
And there wasn't even a compromise in that case. There was just a reframe of the question because each of them had been asking, how do I get my way? That was
mhm,
the question they came into that session with. How do I get my way? I need to get my way. And each of their way was clearly diametrically opposed to what the other wanted. One wanted to be in bed
mhm,
by 8 o'clock, and the other wanted to party all night long. How do you reconcile that? I don't know how. But when we changed the frame of their mindset, when we put on a new filter, by through a new question, their world changed.
mhm,
I
yeah.
believe, had they not had that question, Lydia, had they stayed in this adversarial, my way or the highway type of, I believe their wedding night would have been an absolute catastrophe
Yeah, I agree.
because it would have been stress leading all the way up to it, fear, oh no,
Mm,
horrible, just that, the mind just keeps going and going. This is going to be horrible. I'm not going to get my way. Blah, he's not going to come to bed with me, or she's going to want me to go to bed early. This sucks. All my friends, all of the stories. And man, so, you said something earlier. It's a journey.
mhm,
It is absolutely a journey. No couple, there's not just one thing that people do and all of a sudden they're in this we thinking mode. It's a
yeah,
journey and it's messy. And
mhm.
I'll often tell couples, expect it to take 10 years before you're really good at being with each other. 10 years. And that's after you start trying.
10 years of work. Well, they say it takes 10 years, just like outside of like the whole couple thing. In like arts and whatnot, they say it actually takes 10 minutes to become an expert at something. So in this case, an expert at
So,
the relationship.
yeah, 10 years. And I'll watch their reactions. If they go, oh, well, that's actually reassuring, you know. I mean, they might make a joke, oh, 10 years. Oh, okay, well, I mean, that's a long time. We can do that. That's very reassuring. But if I
Mm,
say 10 years and someone goes, oh my God, there's no way I can do this. Well, then that might be a sign that you're not up for this journey. And that's okay. Not every couple is supposed to stay together. That's okay.
yeah. So does that going back to again the uncomfortability and sort of the topic we were on around men and their difficult emotions and whatnot, would that same principle apply the we looking at it in from that mindset? um how is me working on this going to serve us?
Mhm.
Or you know what I mean, like look,
Yeah,
would that help um with
definitely.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are plenty of men and probably surely some women too that are perfectly content with not feeling much.
Mm,
I don't think that men have to feel. It's not, or feel a lot. I mean, I think some
yeah.
men will never feel as much as their partners feel. That's okay. I am never going to feel as much as my partner feels. It's not going to
Mm,
happen. That's okay. But I do the emotional work, well, really for two reasons. Because I want to feel what I'm feeling. I don't want to be a dead man walking. I've experienced that in the military. It was miserable. I was miserable. So I do that work because I want to feel alive. I want to be able to laugh. I also want to be able to cry. Like, I want to feel my life. And it matters to my partner.
yeah.
It matters to her that I can feel and be empathic with what she's going through.
Hmm.
So
So
it absolutely matters.
Yeah. So like just enough to be present in the relationship in the way that is important to your partner, but then also enough um to not react when in a destructive way when those emotions do come up,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
And just mindful of the time, I don't want to keep you for too much longer. I do have one question that is kind of burning a little bit that I really think that our audience um, will benefit from understanding a little bit. When man or woman, when we are in that place where we may be defensive or our guard comes up, excuse me, our guard comes up, or um, we're going in that unproductive place when uncomfortable feelings come up, where we would naturally want to just run away or push down or whatever that might be. How can we identify that this is what's happening?
Mhm.
What are some of the signs that we can look out for? And then from that, you already gave us a couple of examples of what we can do, but um, what are those initial signs that we could look out for so that we can catch ourselves before we go down that destructive road?
Great question. Well, first off, it's important, I think, for people to to realize that usually the so-called signs are there within seconds.
Mm,
Seconds. A lot of couples are very familiar with having arguments for hours.
yeah.
The signs that this was not going to go well were probably there 25 seconds into the conversation.
Mm,
Like it's, especially the more fire a couple has, the more immediate. I mean, it can just, a person, partner can walk into the room and say one word, and a tone of voice triggers a reaction in the other, and they're off.
hmm. Okay.
So I think again, it's important. I think it can be helpful to realize, when I'm working with couples, I'll often tell them, if you're still, if you're in an argument and you're 10 minutes in, you've probably been talking about it too long already.
Hmm.
Not 2 hours, 10 minutes. If
Yeah.
you're if you're at odds like this, stop.
Hmm.
Stop. You're probably only going to make things worse from here, right? So I'll teach couples a practice that actually I learned partly from the school of nonviolent communication.
Hmm.
It's basically just a communication practice of acknowledging what your partner is saying, acknowledging and then reassuring your partner.
Hmm.
And because usually, arguments, when people are triggered, um, no good solutions come from a state of disconnection. No good solutions come when you're in a state of disconnection. And when you're triggered, the two of you are in fight or flight. And again, it can happen within 5 seconds that you begin that trigger. If you don't come back from that, come down from that, and recreate connection, it doesn't matter. It's not going to go well. Whatever so-called, first off, you probably won't even come up with a solution. And if you do come up with a solution, one or the other of you is going to be pissed about it. Probably both of you.
Hmm.
So, you ask a great question. There's just no one thing fits all. I think um,
Hmm.
I am a big fan of getting professional support. You know, I
Yep.
have I have online courses also that even the book that I came out with, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her, just a few months ago. There's so
Hmm.
many different tips and tools and practices and things that you can do in those moments. The
Yep.
key the key, Lydia, is to catch it quickly before
Yeah.
it spirals out of control. And
Yeah.
by quickly, I really mean within the first 3 minutes,
Hmm.
not the first 3 hours. Although, look, hey, if it takes you 3 hours to realize, okay, fine, look, just least it took you 3 hours and not 3 days or 3 years.
Yeah. And
You
at
know,
least you're looking out for it as well.
be looking out for it. That's one of the most important and helpful practices is the first to start recognizing the signs of trigger in your own body, the
Yeah.
signs of fight or flight or freeze, what those look like in your body so that when it happens, and it can happen within seconds, rather than trying to solve something from that state, because you won't, you can work powerfully. You can speak what's actually happening for you into the conversation. And hopefully your partner is enrolled in getting through this with you. And the two of you can, when you can speak from that place, again, you basically you stay in partnership and you can get through. I believe if you can learn how to stay connected and stay in partnership, you can get through anything with your partner.
Mm.
Anything.
Stay in the we, in the
Stay
we mindset.
in the we mindset. But if
Mm.
you can't, if you don't know how to stay connected and stay in partnership, then you can't get through anything.
Mm.
Just leaving your socks on the floor could end your relationship because you don't know how
Yeah.
to stay connected.
Well, it's never about the socks. It's about the 3-hour fight you had before that wasn't resolved or whatever, right?
It's about the state of disconnection between you. Totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know I didn't give you a. I mean, I've given you a lot of different
I
things here
think,
and there, sprinklings.
yep.
Relational work is nuanced and challenging, and it is a journey, and there are no simple. That's not true. I would say there are some simple practices, not solutions, but practices, but they're not easy
Mm.
because we have so much programming and so much momentum in unskillful practice
Mm.
that, I'd love to have easy, simple solutions to all your relationship woes, but that's just not life in a human body.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if we're coming with our own individual programming for so many years. It's been there. It's but the thing that the key that I guess took from that was um, being willing to do the work and coming to the table with the we mentality, the main things, and then from there, I guess you find what works for you guys. You explore what works for you guys, and I think with this kind of work, I think given how uneducated most of us are, I think seeking the help from a professional, from somebody that can give you that insight is also
It's invaluable. It's
yeah,
absolutely. We're not supposed to figure this out by ourselves. And what's more, we can't figure it out by
yeah,
ourselves. We need
yeah,
we need support. We need help. We need our tribe. We need the tribe.
exactly. People to reflect back to us the things that we don't necessarily see, or
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bryan. I learned so much. It was really fantastic to sit with you and have this conversation. I hope that everybody who will be watching this will learn a lot from it as well. And thank you very, very much.
Thank you for your great questions, Lydia.